Call of Duty Zombies started as a very simple concept. It's just you in this small cramped building with a mystery box, a couple of weapons, and your job is just to survive as long as possible. And throughout the years, the game mode would slowly but surely evolve, adding new features, getting more complex, and completely changing genres in some cases, to where now, where we have in Call of Duty Zombies, is very different to where it started. But with all this evolution and growth, certainly came some growing pains, and we're gonna go back through the entire history of Call of Duty Zombies, look at every single game, and we're gonna take apart the best and worst features to come out of that particular game. Now, this can range from just a little gameplay feature, just a small addition that maybe affects the gameplay, or it can be a giant overall system and something that fundamentally affects every map in the game. Now, to begin here, we need to go all the way back to the beginning of history for CoD Zombies, where it literally just started as a campaign Easter egg. After you would beat the last mission, you would be thrown into this small survival level, and it was never really meant to get the level of detail and features that modern CoD Zombies would have, but that didn't stop it from still being an absolute cultural icon at the time. However, Zombies was very simple back in the day, and World at War as a game is very scuffed from a technical perspective, right? It's not exactly the most polished game, and it's not necessarily a feature of the game, right? The technical state would be unfair to claim that as the worst feature, but let's start with the best thing about World at War Zombies, and I thought about it a lot, and because every single map was a true innovation, introducing something brand new, whether that be enemy types, perks, traps, etc., I think the one thing that fundamentally changed Call of Duty Zombies forever and really allowed it to become the absolute cultural icon that it is today that's still relevant is the Pack-a-Punch machine. This fundamentally would shift the direction of Zombies. The ability to take your gun that you've acquired in the game and further upgrade it, maybe changing its effects and its name and making it a lot more powerful. This single-handedly provided like double the amount of replayability that a typical Zombies map would have, which is partly why Doris is regarded as one of the best maps in Zombies history. But the Pack-a-Punch machine was only ever featured in this one map on World at War, but after that point, it would never not be appearing in a Zombies map. It was included in every map since then, including non-Treyarch stuff. It was that important. Basically, it took the ability to take a regular old weapon, make it a lot stronger, and push even further into higher rounds and extending that progression of the game that it had. It was absolutely just monumental at the time, and the Pack-a-Punch machine is easily the best thing to come out of World at War. However, with all of this good, there is some bad, and the worst thing to come out of World at War is tricky because there's a couple contenders. I'm not going to include anything like technical, even though the sticky zombies are really annoying and jank. The game is just kind of not built well in some areas. Like, there's only 24 zombies per round on most maps, and that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Also, if you're using the Wunderwaffe on Doris, it can just basically nullify and take away your Juggernog. Like, that's not fun at all. That's kind of dumb. But above all else, I think the worst thing to come out of World at War, it has to be Quick Revive and its uselessness. For those of you who haven't played World at War in a long time or maybe ever, you know, Quick Revive does not behave how it does in virtually every other Zombies game, where if you take it down, especially in solo, this is the thing that revives you. However, in World at War, it does absolutely no effect in solo. Of course, it does help you pick up your teammates quicker in co-op. It does what it says on the box, but in solo, it has no effect. There is no point to buying this perk, and I think that's one of the worst things about it, because World at War, you basically play with one life period if you're playing solo, and there's no way to really extend that or, you know, have extra lives. It's just kind of pointless. Let's talk about our sponsor, Factor. Look, Factor has been an absolute lifesaver for someone like me. After using their products for a bit, I quickly found out how much of a benefit it was on my day-to-day life. If you're trying to be a bit more health conscious and mindful about what you're eating, Factor takes all of the guesswork out of preparing properly portioned, delicious, and healthier meals instead of going out and spending exceedingly high money, you know, trying to find a place to eat and getting hassled for tips at every possible moment. Factor delivers a variety of chef-crafted options for any kind of palate. So even if you're a little bit picky about your food, you can cater your box to match exactly what you prefer. I shared some of my Factor meals that I had with friends and family, and they were so good that it got them curious into looking into it for themselves. Meals are ready to go in like 2 minutes, so forget about the meal prep every week and all that hassle that comes along with that. You can use my code CHOPPERFEB50 for 50% off of your first Factor box. It's a really good way to try it and see if it's right for you, so sign up using the link in the description and use my code for half off your first first Factor box. Thank you, Factor, to being a friend of the channel and sponsoring the video. Now that the bills are paid, let's get back to it. Moving on, however, to Black Ops 1. This is basically the big brother of World at War. Honestly, structurally, they're very similar, and you can tell with the first couple of maps on BO1, they are essentially glorified World at War maps. They were literally made for that game. However, Black Ops 1 would start to find its own direction as its season went on, and we got a variety of interesting maps, such as Ascension, Shangri-La, Moon, Call of the Dead, and so on. And not only great maps, but amazing features would come out of Black Ops 1 as well, and in a lot of ways fixed the problems of World at War. They fixed the quick revive issue. It's actually useful in solo, which is great. They added tons of brand new wonder weapons. They fixed the 24 zombie problem, and they really tightened up the gameplay loop that was first introduced. However, Black Ops 1 isn't without its growing pains either. But before we get to that, the best thing about Black Ops 1, in my opinion, was the introduction of real Easter eggs. They're a little bit different to the main quest that we have in modern CoD Zombies, although they follow a similar formula. They were very, very hidden and a bit obscure, but they were interesting because, you know, you had this survival sandbox game, but there was something a little bit more underneath if you dug just a bit beneath the surface, and it made the maps feel really mysterious and alive, and every single BO1 main quest is it's very interesting in its own right, and Easter eggs would fundamentally also become a part of Call of Duty Zombies, just like the Pack-a-Punch machine did. However, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, and I'm gonna say it, the worst thing to come out of Black Ops 1 is probably its map hazards and gimmicks. So every single map had a different hazard to contend with. For example, Call of the Dead had George Romero, and he essentially was an infinitely respawning mini-boss that would prevent you from camping, which was a very popular strategy where you post up at one specific area and don't leave and just try to hold it down for as long as possible. That entire strategy would be nullified by George Romero on this map. Or Take 5, for example. This map takes place in the Pentagon, and every couple of rounds, the Pentagon thief would spawn in and literally come up to you and just yoink your gun out of your hands. He would take your weapon, and if you don't recover it, it's gone forever. So every couple of rounds, you'd have to contend with this really annoying feature. Or on Moon, with the excavators coming down and cutting off parts of the map, or even the spacemen in that map. Like, and these were fun hazards, I guess, and did add some interesting dynamics to the gameplay, but they weren't always the most fun to contend with and could definitely teeter on annoying sometimes. As much as a lot of good came out of Black Ops 1, so did a lot of bad, unfortunately. But moving on to Call of Duty Black Ops 2. This is arguably one of the most beloved games in the series, and it's certainly for good reason. There's a lot to love about BO2. First of all, it's one of the most experimental games. You have tons of different map variety. You have stuff like Transit and Die Rise that play completely different to stuff like Mob of the Dead and Origins, and with every single map, there was a bunch of buildables. A lot of Black Ops 2 was focused on the buildable aspect of it, whether it be a wonder weapon or just an in-game trap or something like that. There was some amazing quests to go on as well. And the best thing to come out of Black Ops 2 was also a very hard contest, because there's so much good that came out of this. I would argue stuff like perma-perks or the ranking system, but what I'm going to select for this is Double Tap 2.0. So Black Ops 2 would introduce a new version of Double Tap compared to the prior, where Double Tap originally just made your weapon shoot twice as fast, and that was it. It would also waste your ammo twice as quickly. However, Double Tap 2.0 not only made you shoot twice as fast, but it also doubled the damage of your bullets, or it made a single bullet split into two. This would be really good for stuff like sniper rifles and things like that, and it was an absolutely amazing perk because it was just incredible for every weapon's damage up front. And while that was wonderful, and the wonder weapons made every map play extremely unique, unfortunately, I think the worst thing to come out of Black Ops 2 is, ironically, a couple of its maps. I mean, it's kind of fun in a nostalgic way, but Transit is largely poked at as like the poster child of a bad CoD Zombies map, and on launch on Black Ops 2, Transit was not very well received, and still to this day, it is objectively not a well-designed map. We had a bunch of these BO2 documents leaked recently, and we were able to see what they were planning for the original vision of Transit, and had they actually had their original vision played out, it could have been a lot different. But the modern day Transit that you and I are all familiar with is just not really a good map at all, and in fact, it's probably one of the worst in Zombies history. But if you want a really specific feature of what I think is the worst thing to come out of Black Ops 2, I'm gonna say it's the perk on Die Rise Who's Who. This was actually meant to replace Quick Revive in solo, and the idea on paper is cool. It's like if you go down, you get another ghost of yourself to go and revive yourself, but it is absolutely useless in the map because you spawn in with, you know, no extra health, no gun. You're practically helpless when it comes to reviving yourself. It was a very bad perk, and they've pretty much scrapped it since then, and I don't think we'll ever see it return, but it is a bad perk. Moving on to the next game in the series that would come after Black Ops 2 would be Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. This would be the first time a non-Treyarch Call of Duty Zombies mode would get made, and so how would the developers at Sledgehammer go about handling it? Well, Exo Zombies, I'm gonna be honest, lads, it's not my favorite game mode. I have to be so for real. It's really not my favorite, but there's a lot of things that I think maybe came out of it that were good features that I would like to see return, and there's also quite a lot of things that I really hope we never see again, honestly. And I was thinking about this for a bit, and the answers came to me pretty quickly. I think the best thing to come out of Exo Zombies is actually its unique approach to Pack-a-Punch and Easter eggs. So you need to understand how the Exo Zombies PAP system works. You go into a game and you can upgrade your weapon 20 separate times. Each one is a little bit less pricey than a traditional Pack-a-Punch, but you can upgrade your gun about 20 times. However, if you do the map's main quest and complete the Easter egg, you can actually upgrade your weapon to a further 25 times. I don't know, I thought this was pretty cool. It gives you this tangible in-game incentive to complete the map's main Easter egg and take it a step farther, and if you want your weapon to be as powerful as it can be, then you might as well complete the Easter egg and upgrade to 25. It kind of made it this coveted thing, which I thought was a great idea. But however, there's a lot of bad to come out of Exo Zombies as well, and I had to think about this for quite a bit, but I'm going to keep it simple. The worst thing to come out of Exo Zombies is by far these infamous electric EMP zombies. So, I mean, if it wasn't apparent already, the entire gimmick and point of Exo Zombies is that you get to use the Advanced Warfare Exo movement, right? You get a suit at some point in the game, you can double jump, you can thrust around, and you can use the advanced movement, and these EMP zombies are meant to temporarily disable your exosuit. And maybe that doesn't sound so bad, right? It's just a temporarily disabling, and it's not like, oh, like, so just this is the game. This is the game y'all be playing. It's really scuffed. It made this mode so incredibly unenjoyable for high rounds. I can't even begin to describe it. There's other things that are really bad, such as the fact that the map infection, basically you get cut off parts of the map as you go into higher rounds. Like this toxic gas invades a couple of the areas and they just become unplayable for some reason. I don't know why. That map is genuinely horrific. There was also another good thing I thought of while I was recording this, and that's the fact that if you beat all of the Easter eggs, you get access to this mode called Double Feature, which is essentially a hardcore mode for the last map. It's really cool, and it's kind of like an alternate ending. It's not something a lot of people played, but it is a really cool addition. Just thought I'd throw that one in there, but a lot of good did come out of Exo Zombies. However, I would argue a lot more bad did, I think. But moving on to the most coveted game in the franchise is Call of Duty Black Ops 3. And it's like, where do I even start with this? I mean, BO3 might be the quintessential zombies experience. It might be the game you want to play for not only the deepest, but the most wide in variety of content to play as well. Not only do we have a bunch of banger maps on disc, but it also got a Zombies Chronicles pack with all of the old remastered classics, a bunch of them, and there is so much to play and enjoy in BO3, and it just has fundamentally good bones and good systems. There's a lot about Black Ops 3 to love. I could go on forever about the good things. However, if I had to nail it down to one of my favorite features, I'm going to say one of the best things to come out of Black Ops 3 is actually Gobblegum. And even though there's still a little bit of stigma and controversy with Gobblegum being a pay-to-win feature or whatever, I do think Gobblegum and the fact that you still could earn them in-game, they added this sandbox nature to the game, where if BO2 was about its buildables, Black Ops 3 was about its Gobblegums. That's how you had a different experience in story match to match. A Gobblegum could completely change how you experience a map, and in more ways than one. There were Gobblegum that were just genuine in-game benefits like Perkaholic or shopping free or crate power or something like that, but there was also Gobblegum that kind of just did fun things as it relates to the mechanics in Sandbox, like Killing Time that just freezes everything in the map for 30 seconds, or Fear and Headlights, or the Gobblegum that like makes crawlers, or the one that just rebuilds barriers for some reason. Like, there's just some silly ones in here, and it's that kind of variety that added a different story to every single map every time you played it. The Gobblegum added almost infinite replayability to Black Ops 3 on top of of it already being a great game. However, as much as I love Black Ops 3 and it is my favorite zombies game, there are some bad things to come out of it as well, and I think the worst thing to come out of Black Ops 3, if I'm being totally fair here, this might sound like kind of a harsh judgment, but I'm gonna say a lot of its boss fights, in particular Zetsubo no Shima's and Revelations. These boss fights are just very underwhelming, they're not mechanically interesting, and they're just kind of overall lame. For how great the Easter eggs and maps themselves are, you would expect a really satisfying finale, but I can't help but feel anytime I do the Zetsubo no Shima boss fight or Revelations, just feeling very underwhelmed and kind of dissatisfied. To be fair, I mean, stuff like Der Eisendrock and I think Gorod Krovi have good boss fights, but these other two are just not very fun. Even the Shadows of Evil boss fight's kind of lame, and you know, for how great these maps are, if they had actual satisfying banger boss fights, they could probably go from a 10 out of 10 to an 11, but the boss fights definitely hold back some of these maps to some degree, and I don't find them entirely impressive. But that's really the only real bad feature I can say about Black Ops 3 that I feel like anyways. But moving on from that to our next Call of Duty Zombies game would be the second non-Treyarch Zombies title in history with Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, and this took a very different approach to something like Exo Zombies, where Infinite Warfare was all about its personality. As opposed to Exo Zombies, where every single map was just like an Atlas facility, IW Zombies took a very different approach, where one map would be in this kind of like 80s theme park, the second one would be in a 90s slasher movie, the next one would be like in an old 50s monster movie, right? Every single one was entirely unique for what it was going for, so every map felt different, which in a lot of ways was good, but in a lot of ways was not so good. However, I think the best thing overall to come out of IW Zombies has to be not only its phenomenal top-tier boss fights, but its super Easter egg reward as well. After completing all of the boss fights, which were all great, except one, after you beat all of these and defeated Mephistopheles, who is literally still the best boss fight in Zombies history to this day, you would get access to something called Director's Cut, and spawning in with Director's Cut would give you all of the perks to begin with. You would also have like 25,000 points, and you could just go crazy. You'd get this special Willard Wyler skin, you'd get like an exclusive camo. These super Easter egg rewards were fantastic, and it's what we wanted for Black Ops 3. Like, I guess another thing that kind of sucked about BO3 was very lame super Easter egg rewards, and IW completely corrected that. So I think that is one of the best things to come out of that game. However, the worst thing to come out of IW Zombies was its questionable map design. To be honest, like Spaceland, Raven the Redwoods, and even Shaolin Shuffle are pretty good maps from a design perspective, but then you got to Attack of the Radioactive Thing and the Beast from Beyond. Attack of the Radioactive Thing is one of the most baffling maps I have ever played. It's like really open and badly paced, but it's not an open world map. Beast from Beyond has cryptids that spawn in the first couple of rounds, and they behave exactly like they do in Extinction movement-wise, but they deal the same damage as a regular zombie, which is not only not fair, but also they appear in the boss fight of this map, and you have to play this really like weird strategy with them, and it's just not a fun experience. These two maps are just not good. I think the first three IW maps are great, the last two kind of stink, but the actual finale with Mephistopheles in the Beast from Beyond map is really great. It's excellent. The best boss fight in Zombies history. I'll die on that hill, but I mean, the maps are just, they're simply not good. Moving on to our next game in the franchise would be Call of Duty World War II. This was kind of like the dark ages for zombies. Between IW and World War II, like a lot of the zombies community stopped playing around this time, and World War II took some very big swings and some interesting approaches to its gameplay. Matter of fact, World War II Zombies, it was actually the first zombies mode to really introduce the class or role-based system in the game, which is still what we have in modern CoD Zombies with, like, you know, the specialists and field upgrades. World War II was the first game to introduce a lot of those systems. Now, even though it was the first introduction, that doesn't mean it was all great. However, I don't think the best or worst part about World War II is in its, like, create a class or any of these role-based menus. I actually think the best thing to come out of World War II is what I wish they would do in CoD Zombies now, and it's actually what they they did on the Final Reich. So in that map, you might recall that the Easter egg is kind of like what we have in Black Ops 6 with directed mode, where you have this journal and it guides you through steps to completing an Easter egg. And it's like this little quest that, you know, you kind of get walked through as you play the game. And it's really fun and interesting. However, there is also a proper hardcore Easter egg. That's like kind of the main quest. And there is an Easter egg with a different ending. Now, the actual like hardcore Easter egg has completely different steps. It's a lot more tricky to solve, and you get a totally different ending if you do this. This is what I wish Modern Zombies would do, right? Like, we have an Easter egg and we have this directed mode, but I wish there was like a regular main quest and a proper hardcore Easter egg. I would love for them to actually use this format, because as much as I love this idea in World War II, the execution was not my favorite, and that's just because World War II Zombies as a mode isn't exactly my favorite, but that doesn't mean they should throw out the idea entirely. I don't think they'll ever do that, but that would be my dream if I could have it. However, the worst thing to come out of World War II Zombies, and I don't think you guys are going to disagree with this, is the armor system. Kind of weird to think about that World War II was actually the first CoD Zombies game to introduce the armor-based health system. However, the implementation was genuinely so bad. So you have these 3 armor plates that you can purchase at these stations, and you know, the armor does work by mitigating damage that you take. However, the armor pulls from your regular point economy. Cold War did something very smart where they made the armor tied to a completely different currency, that being salvage, and Black Ops 6, while they do tie it to points, it's a little bit different in that game, and the implementation is much better. But the introduction of armor in World War II was easily the worst part about the gameplay. It's hard to really convey how truly terrible the armor system in World War II is without actually playing it yourself. If you have the ability to, I mean, load up World War II, go for a high round, and try to see how much armor taxes you, not only on your actual points, but on your mental health. I'm just glad we never have to deal with that system again. But moving on to our next Zombies game would be Call of Duty Black Ops 4, a very controversial release. Now, there's a couple of things that I considered as being a contender for one of the worst. The thing is, Black Ops 4 is easily the most contentious game. It's not even like Vanguard, where truly everybody hates that game. Black Ops 4 is kind of like split right down the middle. There's a community of people who absolutely love it, and there's another community of people who genuinely hate its guts. And there's a lot we could say about its features, but I think the best thing to come out of Black Ops 4, in my opinion overall, are actually its story cutscenes. And I know that might sound like a weird pick, but hear me out for a second. The ending cutscene of every single Black Ops 4 map has a different impact, but a real impact on you. You remember how 9 ends. You remember Richtofen in the mechanism on Blood of the Dead. You remember Yo Kiss on Ancient Evil. You know what I mean? Like, every single storyline moment in this was very, very important, as opposed to Modern Zombies, where, like, you know, things just happen with no real consequence. You go to get a thing and you leave, and that is the extent of it. That's not the case in BO4, and every single moment is powerful and impactful. The story really advances along, and you feel something with all of these cutscenes. I think that's why a lot of people love Black Ops 4. If story is really important to you when it comes to loving a game, then I think Black Ops 4 does scratch that itch. However, there's a lot of stuff about the gameplay that doesn't work in BO4, in my opinion. So I had to think about this one a lot, and it's between 2 choices for me, and maybe I would consider these equal, but I think the worst thing to come out of Black Ops 4 was probably the perk system or the specialist. The perk system kind of sucks because it was extremely limiting and not in a fun way. In older zombie games where you still had a hard perk limit, there were cool little Easter eggs you could do in the game to usually obtain the rest, and that's, I guess, kind of true here, but also not really. And the whole idea was that you would select different perks for different maps and situations, but there ended up being a meta where at some point when that was discovered, virtually all the other perks got ignored and they were never used again. And the other part is the specialists. The specialist system completely broke the entire system of what normal zombies progression entails. You essentially had a weapon that is better than most wonder weapons in your back pocket from the start. You didn't have to do a quest to work for it. You didn't have to earn it in any way. It's just simply there, and it's by far better than any of the wonder weapons in the map. It's much better than any box gun you're gonna have, so it's like, what's the point of using anything else besides your specialist? It just really hurt the feeling of progression in CoD Zombies, which is one of the most satisfying elements, and it completely shot that. I think this was one of the biggest mistakes that Black Ops 4 made as far as gameplay goes. And still, while there's a lot I love about Black Ops 4 even now, there's also quite a lot of things that I don't think aged very well. But moving on to our next Zombies game would actually become Call of Duty Cold War. Now, Black Ops Cold War was a real shift from the prior game. It was essentially a complete backtrack and response and reversal of BO4. And in some ways that was great, and in other ways it was catastrophic. I think the best thing to overall come out of Black Ops Cold War, well, it might be a couple of things. I mean, its new gameplay loop was very fresh and fun. It also had, I would say, the best compromise of the perk system, where it takes a lot of the ideas of the classic perk system and combines it with what BO4 did. You can get all the perks in the game, but the price ascends as you buy more, so you kind of have to prioritize which are the most important, which I think is kind of the best of both worlds. It also had a very intuitive and interesting weapon progression system in the form of tier 3 pack-a-punch and also weapon rarity. And most importantly, it just made the simple act of shooting zombies fun again. Like, it introduced a satisfying gameplay loop that zombies had not had for a little bit of time. Now, with all of that good, it breathed a fresh breath of new life into zombies. It did come with some bad and certainly some growing pains. There's a couple of contenders here, but I'm going to say the worst feature about Black Ops Cold War Zombies was not only loadouts, which completely changed the game of zombies, but also the introduction of the Ethereum upgrade skill tree, and also the introduction of the new modern CoD Zombies point system. These systems are all sort of intertwined, but loadouts changed the game because not only were you not starting in just with a 1911 pistol and trying to work your way up to get better guns, this time you can spawn in with whatever you want. You can bring in an assault rifle fully kitted out with attachments. The difference is the progression is in the rarity of your weapon. The higher rarity a weapon is, the more damage it does. And this was Zombies' first step into going away from a sandbox survival mode to an action RPG. That combined with the Ethereum upgrade tree. So there was an upgrade tree for just about every single weapon type or perk that would give you these permanent upgrades to their functionality. And you earned these crystals by playing the game, and they would be permanently applied once you've upgraded them. I hated this system because it was just this one and done thing that you would just go through an upgrade and then never think about again. It was just very stagnant and inconsequential for the most part. I did not really like this system, and it was Zombies taking a more RPG-esque approach, which they would change in future titles, but still, this was not my favorite. And then obviously the infamous point system. Treyarch wanted to get rid of having a wrong way to kill zombies, right? And it also got rid of min-maxing, where you would get like a weak powered weapon, shoot a zombie a couple times in the leg, and then knife them for the maximum amount of points. Instead, really the only way to maximize points is get a headshot, but even then, like, it's not that big of a difference. Now there's no longer a wrong way to kill zombies, but they basically made a wrong way to spend points. I could go on about it, but I won't. Point is, a lot of people don't like this new modern CoD Zombies point system. It very much simplifies the game and reduces the creative skill that you can have, especially in the early game, and makes every match play almost the same. I do think the point system in modern CoD Zombies is inherently flawed in some ways, but we'll see what they do about it in the future. But moving on from Cold War, the next game would be the fated Call of Duty Vanguard. Unlike Black Ops 4, that has a community that's pretty much split right down the middle on it, I would say the poll on here is about 95% maybe. There are 5% of absolute freaks out there that genuinely enjoy Call of Duty Vanguard Zombies, but most people are in agreement. The community is almost entirely unified here that this game sucks, and it's very strange because Vanguard is essentially split into two different games. You have the like Duranfong and Terra Maldicta style of maps, which are like these sort of objective-based things, and then they finally heard community feedback and went back to proper round-based maps with Shinonuma and the Archon. But the Archon is literally just Terra Maldicta, but with a green filter. Vanguard is genuinely foul. Like, I don't even know what to say, really, like, for this one. I mean, I could write a whole essay about what's bad about it. Actually, I did write an essay about why Vanguard's bad. So if you want a real in-depth discussion on everything wrong with Vanguard, you can check that out. But if I had to boil it down to just a couple of things, I think the worst thing about Call of Duty Vanguard was actually Duranfong. It was an attempt at doing a round-based but not round-based zombies experience that was more objectives, that had boring features, terrible enemies. Basically, nothing about this was fun. There's a lot of just waiting around. Nothing about the gameplay is exciting or interesting. There's not even really an Easter egg to this map. There's nothing to do. I distinctly remember this. I had a real-life friend of mine play this, and I, watched him for the first time. He did 2 objectives, and he looked at me, he said, "Is this all you do?" And at that point, I knew it was over. Like, Duran Fong is the worst thing that has happened, is the lowest point in the zombies community by a mile. But with all of the bad big picture stuff that came out of Vanguard and it being an overall terrible flop, there's actually a couple of little gems hidden in the gameplay that I think are kind of good ideas. I'm going to say the best things to come out of Call of Duty Vanguard is, number one, how they handled perks. I really love the idea of upgrading your perks in-game instead of in a menu. Like, I like Black Ops 2's permanent perk system. You do a little challenge in the game, you do get a perma perk applied. Vanguard had you upgrading perks by purchasing the same machine over and over again. I don't like that part. I don't like the actual method how you upgrade your perks, but I like the idea of getting a perk and upgrading it in the game itself and not in a menu. That's just my preference, but, you know, I also really like the Covenant system. You could go up to this statue and it would offer you 3 random Covenants, and you could use a sacrificial heart to pick one, and there were these like little buffs, like similar to like how Hades works, and you would pick one of these buffs. Maybe it makes you deal more damage while moving quickly, or it slows enemies or something like that, kind of like how augments are in BO6, but it was something that you would pick in-game. They would randomize every single round, and you could pick and choose what you want. It was a really neat idea, and honestly, not a bad feature that I would kind of like to see return in future Zombies titles, but it's just unfortunate that this theoretically good system was just in service of a dog water game. Moving on to a weird one, this is Modern Warfare Zombies. So MW3 would be the first Modern Warfare game to really feature a Zombies mode, and this was very different. It's not even a round-based experience at all. MWZ is an extraction-based mode, meaning the goal is to go into game, do these objectives, get schematics, which are basically stuff like perks or pack-a-punch crystals or Ethereum tools, whatever it is. Just get things that you can use to spawn in for your next deployment in a match, with the end game being there's these things called like Dark Ether Rifts and other end game content where you can go and like do boss fights or do story missions and stuff like that. Honestly, MWZ was pretty cool for being a very non-traditional Zombies experience. It was very interesting in its own right. It's not even really comparable that much to round-based experiences, but there were some good and really bad features to come out of this. The best thing to come out of Modern Warfare Zombies, or MWZ, is easily its large-scale boss battles and story missions. You could essentially take on a giant big worm with this huge public match of people to all defeat this one thing, and it's this really interesting, chaotic experience. You can bring a smaller group into a Dark Ether Rift and maybe fight a boss there. MWZ introduced a whole brand new scale to what Call of Duty Zombies can be, and for that alone, I think it's unique and interesting. However, the worst part about this mode by far was the cooldown system on your schematics. So for those of you who have never played this, imagine you have a schematic that allows you to get a triple pack-a-punch right when you start the game. You have this flawless Ethereum crystal, you can spawn into the next match and, you know, apply it to your weapon. You've earned this schematic, like you've done the thing required to get it. Now, you spawn in that schematic, you play your game, and let's say you want to play another one. The cooldown before you can spawn that crystal in again is 3 days. It's 72 hours. Now, eventually, they would do things to like help reduce the cooldowns and stuff like that, and there was ways to kind of game the system, obviously, but I mean, just as a feature, just completely having cooldowns for every single schematic and item, it was like, you know, once you use them, you're like, well, I guess I'm not going to play this game for another 3 days because I can't use my stuff. I really have no reason to. So it was just a strange idea. They didn't want people always having access to their schematics for some reason, which in some ways is understandable, but in other ways not really, and I think that was easily the worst part about this whole mode. But I get making a zombies extraction mode is a totally different challenge, so I can't really blame them too much, I guess, but it just really sucked. Now, moving on to current day, where we are in Call of Duty Black Ops 6, I could say a lot about this zombies mode, and I certainly will. There's a lot of really good things and not so good things about this mode, but I think the good overall do outweigh the bad. Some of the best things I feel like this mode has to offer are some incredible Easter eggs and great boss fights. These are the best Treyarch boss fights we've ever had, but if I had to really nail down a specific feature that I like, accepting that this is a new kind of like action-based RPG game, as opposed to the Ethereum upgrade tree system, I actually greatly prefer how Black Ops 6 has it with augments. You have these different attributes and abilities that you can apply to your perks that give it different functions, but you don't get all of them at once. You really have to pick and choose and build craft a little bit here, and I really like this system compared to the prior one in Cold War. All of this combined with the general map design, the weapons, the boss fights, the way the Easter eggs are, Black Ops 6 has an incredibly satisfying and enjoyable gameplay loop, and I think the maps have a really distinct formula that works. However, the problem with Black Ops 4, and I think easily the worst part about the game mode, is the very, very strict point economy and overall point system. This is what I feel is the biggest complaint with the overall community, and I think a lot of it is warranted. The problem is, with Black Ops 6 being such an FPS RPG, you really are emphasized to invest all of your resources in a game in one gun, meaning hitting stuff like the mystery box or trying out other wall weapons is largely pointless and a waste of time. And this just means that a lot of the sandbox experimentation and trying out different guns is just not really a viable option in BO6, or at least if you want to play optimally, you should be investing everything you have into a single weapon. And, you know, that can make the gameplay of zombies feel a little bit one-dimensional and hollow sometimes. And I just think that the point economy is far too strict. They did get rid of having a wrong way to kill zombies, so to speak, but they introduced a very wrong way to spend points. Cold War had this problem too, but not nearly as bad as Black Ops 6 has it. And also, one of my other least favorite aspects of Black Ops 6 is high rounds. This would be fine if you could invest in a single gun and it would carry you in higher rounds, but past round 35, virtually every single gun in the game becomes almost irrelevant, and you either just have to use a wonder weapon or use a mutant injection spam, which, you know, is the most like brainless way to get high rounds, and they're incredibly unfun in my opinion. And I think those two are the biggest issues plaguing Black Ops 6 right now. We'll see what they do in the future, but hopefully they can remedy a few of these issues. The thing is, Call of Duty Zombies has had so many features come and go. Throughout the years and the entire evolution of the mode, we've seen a lot of systems be introduced and then be revoked, and some have really stuck around with the test of time, and there's a lot that I probably skipped over that you feel like maybe should have been here, but every CoD Zombies game has some good and some bad, and I wanted to review what I thought were the best features and the worst features of every Call of Duty Zombies game in history.